Happy New Year, Houndsman XP fans. Man, we sure hope you guys had a great Christmas and holiday season. Wrapping it up with a great new year, kicking off a great new year. I know I really appreciated being able to take a few days off and get in the woods, get some hounds in the woods. We coon hunted, we bear hunted. Seth was running long dogs. Chad's out there getting after it. He's sending pictures and posting pictures of mountain lions and trees. Whew, man, we needed that break just to collect our thoughts. So if you tuned in and you caught our recap episodes, we really appreciate it. Tried to pick some stuff that you guys would really enjoy and stuff that maybe needed another listen. So, yeah. Hey, short pre-roll on this one. I'm not going to spoil this story. Like I said, we took a break. We've been bear hunting. Heath and the crew over there have been getting after the bears. And I got to go over there and hunt with them several days and spend some time with them. But we had Brad Luttrell and Derek Towles from Go Wild come over and spend a couple days hunting with us. And they'd never bear hunted with hounds before. Brad Luttrell is the CEO and creator of Go Wild, the social media platform, and we took him on a bear hunt. And I think it's safe to say, after you hear this story, that it was a good move. We won some supporters of hunting with hounds. It was great. I'm going to let you get the whole scoop and the whole story from Brad himself. This is going to be a recap of his hunt and some of the takeaways he got from that hunt. It's really interesting to listen to because I know as a hunter and a houndsman that I take a lot of things for granted, and, you know, I guess I've learned to embrace the suck, and it's not that big a deal. It's just part of hunting with hounds. But I'm telling you, these guys really had some good takeaways, and Brad brings them all together in this episode of the Houndsman XP podcast. So here we go. We're going to kick it off for 2023, and this is one long hunting story, and it's an epic one. It's one of the hardest pack outs I've ever done on a bear, and I think you're going to enjoy it. It's refreshing to hear, you know, the deer hunting crowd, the other hunting crowds, and their impressions on what we do. So, good stuff, folks. The old South Dog box is rocking. It's time to get the tailgate down. Let's dump the box. All right, welcome back to the Houndsman XP podcast. And we've got, we had a wild time in Virginia, and I've got the man on the trigger with me, Brad Luttrell from Go Wild. How you doing today, Brad?
Dude, good, doing great. Still riding a high from that bear hunt. I've told everybody I've talked to that it was the craziest hunt I've ever done. It was the hardest hunt I've ever done. It was some of the most fun I've ever had hunting. Totally changed my perspective on houndsmen. And I say that not to say that I had a bad perspective. I just didn't realize how much there is to it. You guys tell me that. I've been on here with you and Heath talking before, but I mean, my God, man, until you get out with these dogs and just do it, you just really can't understand it.
Yeah, it's like a buddy of mine. The first time we went to Vegas, a buddy of mine says, man, you need to go see one of those Cirque du Soleil shows or whatever they call them. How do you pronounce that? Cirque
du Soleil is how I've heard it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
But
I'm from where Heath's from, so we say everything wrong.
We do too. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so when we went to Vegas that first time, they said, man, you got to go see this show. And I said, well, what's it about? And it's like, it's nothing like you'd expect. It's the most entertaining thing you've ever seen, and it makes absolutely no sense. So from an outsider's perspective coming into this thing, you're walking into it totally blind, you know, maybe even some predisposed ideas about what's going to happen and different things, and then nothing ever goes the way that you expect it to.
Yeah, and Derek and I even talked about the gear. You know, we'll talk about that, of what I learned from that. And I was even texting you like, hey, what were some of those items you were – because I didn't think I had any gaps in my gear really, but I definitely do. Mm-hmm. Like there's definitely things I would change before I go back.
Yeah, let's cover that too, man. So
yeah, we'll get there.
Let's talk real quick. I want to cover what's going on at Go Wild. Go Wild is probably – It is by far. I mean, I pretty much quit posting my hunting content on any other social media platform. just because I love posting over on Go Wild. I've been in that community now I've been a member since early 21, and really got aggressive about posting during the fall of 21. And the whole time I've been there, the thing that I love about it is you never see the shaming. You never see it's supportive. It's people coming together. And I don't know how you guys have done that. That's awesome.
Well, so we don't do a whole lot of policing like people think we do. We deleted a person last week for shaming somebody over a deer, said it was a small buck, and he had done it twice. And we just don't give warnings on that stuff. I mean, that's it. You're out, Yeah. I'll give warnings in certain scenarios, especially if it's a kid, there's a chance to teach them instead of just booting them out. But, somebody gets in there, that's a spike buck. What are you doing? Like, we very much believe in hunt your hunt. And, if it's legal, it's allowed.
Yeah.
So, and that's literally in the terms of service. So we police that more than, anything that comes up, we're like other apps. Every now and then we'll get scammers in there that we'll kick out. And,
right.
But we do not have there is a zero tolerance policy for bullying somebody for a legal take. So, I think part of that's it. But really, what I like to see and where we might be a little more forgiving to somebody is if they do something like that and the community starts to self-police.
Yep.
That's what's really cool about Go Wild. I mean, dude, Go Wild's posting on all these other platforms as Go Wild. So we post on TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff, trying to make people aware of our brand. I mean, I posted a video, or our team posted a video of me the other day talking about a method to get a deer into a truck if you didn't have anybody around, or some people do the tree and the rope and kind of pull it forward, but sometimes you hunt and you don't have a place where you can do that. So I gave just some thoughts for new hunters of, like, you can actually tie a rope in the back of your bed, and you can get that, if you can get that deer head up and hook it in, at least at the tailgate level, you can pull it in without breaking your back. I just got raked over the coals by all these guys who were basically calling me a wussy, or worse. And they're like, a real man just picks up 200 pounds and throws it in the car. And I'm like, cool. I guess I'm not a real man then. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm not breaking my back. I work smarter, not harder. Right. But it's like hunters on other platforms will do this stuff. And then in our community, I think we've done just a good job of kind of setting the tone in the early days. And now we've got a lot of guys who understand it, and they'll do the bidding for us. They'll come out and say, hey, we don't do that here. You're going to get deleted if you keep that up. And every now and then you'll get somebody that says, I don't care. And then they're out. But usually people are like, okay, this is cool. Like this. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's somebody at deer camp. So why am I doing this on social media? Yeah, that's a tone.
We did a podcast a few weeks ago about, character and principles and stuff like that. And I stick to the adage, it costs you nothing to be nice. It costs you nothing, to congratulate somebody, to give them a compliment. But Go Wild, you don't even have to go in there. And I just brought it up because it's a great credit to the platform you guys have set up there, Brad, that you have a community like that where – and it's not all rainbows and lollipops. I'm not talking about, all this stuff where everybody puts on their nice hat. I mean, it feels genuine, people supporting people, other hunters. And I'd throw this out to the sponsors of this show. I've talked to several sponsors, and I've told them, when you post on other stuff, on other platforms, I don't know what the percentage is of hitting your target audience over there on some Facebook or whatever. But when you sponsor and post at Go Wild, you are hitting your target audience 100% of the time. 100%.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you kind of started to touch on it of like reach, but the engagement too, man. I mean, it's real. Like you get in there and commit. You can get a lot better engagement early than you can on other platforms. But if you commit, like that deer I posted from this year, 423 upvotes and 97 comments. Like those are big numbers for most platforms. That's better than a lot of brands. I'll look at their Instagram content and, they'll have 250,000 followers and get 2 or 3 comments.
Right.
People have they've gotten so used to posting on these other platforms that it seems like you have to, and nobody's kind of stepped back and said, our engagement sucks.
Yeah.
That bear hunt I went on you guys with, there's 43 comments and 151 upvotes,
Yeah.
and I just posted that a couple days ago, and so the engagement's real, the audience is great, the community is great. We've just tried to run something that's very similar to camp and hanging out with you guys. That doesn't mean we don't pick on each other.
Exactly.
Right? Like you guys, somebody, Garrett was making fun of himself with you guys on how bad of a shot he is with a pistol. And then I took 4 shots at that bear. We'll talk about that in a minute of why that happened. But then somebody said something over there of like, it sounds like he shoots like Garrett. And it's like, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's not being mean. I don't want to make it sound like we have a policy where you can't do that. We just don't allow shaming on trophies. Like you're out. That's done.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that here.
Well, I see that all the time over on, I don't know what it is about those other platforms, man. It's just like you get guys that think they have a license to be a jerk, just be an ass right out of the gate. And it's like, just chill, dude.
Yeah. It's weird because a lot of those people I truly believe are probably just normal. Like it's just the internet has that there's the whole thing of you can't get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't advocate violence here, but like there is something, it's been proven, like there's a human nature of we do police what we say in person more because there's a physical part of it, right? And there's anonymity online. There's physical distance, and there's also just a troll culture that exists online. So
for sure. Well, that's enough about social media, man. I mean, I want to celebrate Go Wild and everything, but we had a blast down in Virginia last week, and
dude,
we hunted all week.
Fun.
We hunted all week before you guys got there on Thursday night. We actually postponed the trip a day because we got rained out on Thursday. I was glad to see that you guys could get down there and spend a full 2 days with us and see the dichotomy of the style of hunting, because we hunted Saturday completely different than what we did on Friday, mostly because we got our butts kicked Friday.
And we did an uncensored about this, and I didn't even we kind of hit on what we did on Saturday, but we talked so much about how different it was on Friday. And that was when we shot the bear too. But I mean, me and Derek hit a little bit at the end. It's like, and then we didn't do any of that the next day. It was a totally different style. These guys are like storm chasers out here, and how they're coordinating. And truly, that's the closest thing I could think of to explain it to my wife of what we did on Saturday. I said, Twister? These guys are doing that, except it's a bear moving through, not a tornado.
Right.
But what's funny is I was so unfamiliar with what it takes. Remember, I texted you and I was like, hey, is 2 days even enough? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how long you guys need to be able to run the process. Like if I drive down for 2 days, will I get the experience? And you told me, he's like, yeah, you're going to see what it is. I don't know which version of it.
Right.
But you really encouraged me, like, yeah, you're going to get to see at least a bit of it. I can't promise you anything. And that wasn't why I texted, obviously. I didn't, you can never guarantee an outcome. But I just had no clue what we were signing up for.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of, I'm curious, we'll run this like uncensored. What were your predisposed opinions going into it? Okay, let's cover those, and then I want to see the dichotomy or the similarities of after you did experience it. Or do we want to break down the hunt first?
No, let's go for it. I like that question.
Okay.
Because I think I made a huge mistake out of the gate, first 30 minutes that I regretted 2 hours later, like horribly. In that first conception, a lot of people, the big ignorant criticism of Houndsman is that the dogs do all the work. You guys show up and shoot a bear, and it's an easy pack out and all that stuff. I wasn't there. I talked to you guys. I knew it was a lot of work to train. I knew we were going to be possibly logging a lot of miles from talking to you, but I did not really put together how remote we were going to get when the bear got down. And we'll talk about it. But from what I understand, I ended up in a little bit of a unique scenario here. As you said, that was one of the hardest packouts you've ever seen just by where it went down.
Yeah. And
in my head, though, stupid deer hunter over here, I'm thinking like, we'll be able to get it. Like, we'll get it out, but then we'll be able to get a truck into it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left. Your guys are going to laugh at me. Well, first, to back up even before, the night before, we were talking about packs, and you and Heath even have a little bit of a different style. You run a little bit of a larger pack at times. Heath is so minimalist, though.
Yeah.
He's got nothing, right? He's like running that chest pack. And I think you have a chest rig too, but typically I saw you with that backpack on through a lot of the day.
And it's not ideal. It's not ideal.
Right.
The thing about and that group, I've seen everything with bear hunters. Everything from a Garmin hung around their neck and maybe a bottle of water, and that's it, and a few leashes, of course, to, the full pack deal in the West, where you're going to pack everything out, pack frame type stuff. So,
yeah. Well, so Derek and I heard you guys talking about it, and Heath kind of got in my head a little bit. And I'm not picking on Heath, but like he's talking about how he's like, you do not want to pack. He was even telling me, he's like, really, you don't even want a rifle. And we had that conversation of like, well, I'm not prepared to shoot at an animal with a pistol I've never shot before. I don't feel comfortable with that. Any rifle I felt like I could pick up and be okay. So I went with my little sling bag from Go Wild, like just food, water. I left my main bag in the truck. Mm-hmm. This is where I made my first mistake of my knives, my backup water, my food. Because I'm thinking if bear goes down and the work starts, I'm going to have time to get back to that thing. Was not the case. Like I thought we were maybe 2 miles away from the truck. Derek said we were actually 4 miles away when the bear went down. And then the chaos ensued, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So my first perception was that it was going to be closer to a deer hunt. I shoot a deer, I got to walk out and go get the truck, but I can get back to it. And usually a few hundred yards later, it's up to the truck. Right. That was a dumb perception of mine. And I'm from an area like where we hunted. So I don't know really why I thought that. I just like, that was a mistake. And then, on the flip side, it was kind of funny because Derek had that big pack and he had a scabbard where he did fine the first 4 miles. But when we went down to get to the bear, he was getting stuck because that laurel is so thick. It was frozen. So Derek kind of learned, he's like, yeah, if I was going to get into this, I would get a pistol I was comfortable with, because those rifles are really just far from ideal. And it actually ended up impacting our pack out too. That's where part of the problem started coming up. So like the first perception that was wrong was how much to take in. I think if I were to do it, well, actually the second day I planned on packing more of my big bag, and I didn't have a gun because I'd already tagged out the second day. But I think I would have been somewhere between a little bit bigger pack, 2 shoulder straps, because you walking with a sling too was kind of the weight distribution started to bother me a little bit. But then I would over time learn I'd get a pistol I was comfortable with. I think you guys are dead on that. That makes total sense. And you start trying to get through that stuff. You just can't do it with a gun.
Yeah, it's like so to set the stage here a little bit. The day before you got there, we got rain all day. Temperatures dropped, and then up in elevation, up on top of the mountain where we were, I mean, it was like a winter ice capades wonderland. Everything had the limbs had 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice on it. In the morning, the ice was all holding to the trees. As it warmed up during the day, I posted some video on Go Wild. The ice coming
the ice
down.
Shed.
I don't even know what you call it, man. It was just
I don't know, man.
Wild.
It was when it first started happening too. At one point, Derek and I even thought it was a bear because we hadn't heard any dropping. And at one point we were packing out, and I know we heard a bear because you guys had just run one behind us, and we started walking out, and we heard like a real throaty growl, and we look over, and then I was like, I don't even have a gun loaded, we gotta get out of here. And then we heard that ice drop, and I thought I was getting charged. I'm like, oh crap, it was crazy. But that's how loud that stuff was. It sounded like something thrashing through the woods, but like you said, 1/2 inch ice doesn't sound like it'd be painful, but it's falling in 6-inch chunks from 40 feet up and hitting you in the head. It hurts.
Yeah. It was and plus the water. So it was like walking through a rainstorm and 30 degrees mixed with ice, a winter mix, and the sun was coming through. So you were getting this spectacular light refraction, light show deal going, and we just got soaked.
Oh, dude. I think some of your team thought Derek and I were crazy because, and this is skipping ahead a little bit, but during that pack out, he and I were just busting through all that laurel. And, it's ice, but as it's breaking, it's melting on our coats, and it's soaking through our layers. And we finally met up with Wesley, and he kind of looked us up and down, didn't say anything. And he had to be thinking, though, why are these guys soaked head to toe? And then when we got back to go get the bear, he looked at that and he goes, I see why y'all are so wet now.
Yeah.
Like he didn't realize how thick we were of just busting out. And that's a gear thing too. That's part of what you and that's another perception I had. I knew we were going to be active. I brought a lot more gear than I needed because I didn't know what it was going to be like, and Heath, even the night before, he's like, oh, you don't want to wear that puffy. You'll shred that thing to pieces. Mm-hmm. And I had a backup coat because I kind of thought maybe we'd get into some thick stuff. So I had a real durable Western style 6-sight coat that was great, minus the moisture. It eventually soaked through. But that was another misconception. I think that's kind of how we started this conversation. I was like, what were the misconceptions? I didn't have good boots. I had boots that are great for walking here for like a whitetail hunt of maybe 4 miles, but we did 11 miles that day.
Yeah.
We did multiple creek crossings. The bear died in a creek. And these short boots I had on took on water. Not too bad in the first creek with the bear, but on the pack out, I told you, I said, I got to stop and dump my boots, man. I can't even, I'm going to have blisters terrible here. So like, I don't know what the answer is. You guys were running some pretty expensive boots. Derek and I were Derek had decent boots, like $250 boots. Mm-hmm. But I think if I were going to invest in something, it'd probably be better boots. If I was going to do that, I'd definitely be better boots. And then I had some light merino wool, but I really think I would get something. That's why I was texting you yesterday. Of like, what were you wearing?
Right.
Because you had that really nice, that gray one especially, like that can take a beating. It's thick. It's going to wick away that moisture. That was something I wasn't prepared for either.
When we got back to the truck that night, my base layer was dry.
I didn't have a dry part on my body.
My base layer was dry because when you put the merino base layer and then it was a King of the Mountain. It was their I can't remember which shirt it is. It's not the Trapper pullover. But anyway, it just continually is just like taking it all away from you and just putting it out into the air, evaporating out into the air. So my base layer was dry. I looked at you guys and you guys were soaked. And when I pulled that shirt off, then boom, and when I walked in, I peeled it off and put it in my pack. So when I got to you, even though it was 30-some degrees, I was just wearing a First Light Wick, which is their lightest weight merino base layer. And I get to the top and I was soaked. And immediately when we started skinning, I put the heavier wool back on. I was perfect.
Yeah, I had a 6-sight merino wool blend, and then I had a vest, First Light merino vest on. Mm-hmm. And both of those were wet. Yeah, because that jacket was not. That jacket's a synthetic jacket. It's not meant to take on. It'll do okay in light rain, but I mean, we were just.
This was like being in a rain shower.
Well, and when it started melting, it basically was rain.
Yep, it was.
And you're getting pelted in the face and head with all the ice. The gear, I mean, there's just so many gear adjustments I would make. But mostly the two big ones are or three big ones, I'll say. Bigger pack, smaller gun. The sling bag was just not quite enough. Mm-hmm. I left things behind that I needed. Better boots for sure, for the reasons I talked about. And I got I say cheaper. They're $130 boots. I bought them Under Armour boots years ago. I'll bust them out. They have decent traction.
Sure.
They're fine, right? They're fine. They're not meant to be. They're totally. And they've never been too light on anything except like if I was hiking in, they're so short that sometimes if my pants got a little wet, because we talked about the boot gaiters too. That's also another thing I'd probably add into the mix. But, sometimes they would pull in moisture. That's why I started hunting with rubber boots more. You can't do this hunt with rubber boots, though. I saw that on day one. Like, there's no way. Your feet would be so raw from all, like, a good set of rubber boots is just not going to be tight enough for hiking like that. Yeah. And they usually don't have the traction necessary. But then the final thing is just adding a good wool layer. I think, I was looking at some of the things you sent over, and those, I think the gray jacket you found, that was that other group. It wasn't King of the Mountain. It was, Like I think those run like 125, and I've already got it. I'm buying that before next season.
There you go.
I'm going to do that. and it could make that. It's not a bad investment to be warm, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, I think running that with even under a puffy when it gets really cold and I'm deer hunting will be really nice.
Oh yeah, that Asbel wool pullover is it's a really nice piece, and G. Fred Asbel is a traditional bow hunter. He's a pretty accomplished outdoorsman, and his wife and he designed this pullover that's just awesome. I love it.
Yeah. I'm buying that one. I found it great. I mean, I thought it was a really fair price. Especially like some of those King of the Mountain.
Holy smoke.
They're expensive. I know they're worth it. But I am probably going to ease into my wool. I've got some merino stuff that I bought from First Light and Sixth Sight, but I need to get something thicker.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's the gear. That's the answer to the gear question is those three things.
Yeah.
And I would toss in boot gaiters, but I think I can still survive without those.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're nice to have. The other things are a have to have.
How was let's kind of dial it back. We kind of covered the gear there, upgrades that we would make. So when you went into it, Brad, when you were, you're riding down there, it's like, okay, we're going to be with some dogs and things like that. And, and then let's do the comparison of what you thought about hounds going into it. And then your impression of the hounds after you actually saw what they do and how they do it.
So I'll say I've been around bird dogs, which I know is totally different than what we did, but
Not a lot.
I thought,
yeah,
but they don't. I don't think they walk as much mileage, at least not as we did that first day. It's usually a little tighter. You are at a truck, and that's probably what made my or kind of skewed my thought. I was kind of thinking bird dog hunt. The bird dog hunts I've done have been. You're within a mile of the truck. You can almost see it at times. And those dogs work really hard. I'm not taking away from them. It's just very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a perception that I knew was probably off some. We even talked about that a little bit the night before of like, I've seen bird dogs work. And the other thing I think I had talked to people who run dogs on rabbits enough, and I've even seen some shows, and a lot of that seems like those dogs will run out and come back. And I think in my head, I thought this might be more like that. It's a little harder now that I've seen it to run a bear like a rabbit.
Right.
The bear might do what bear wants to do. The other thing, I talked to my buddy Matt, who works for Garmin, and he goes out on all kinds of crazy hunts. He's always trying something new. And I told him, I said, man, I'm going out with these dog guys. I have no idea what to expect. And he said, oh, it's crazy. They rig these dogs on top of the truck and they drive around until they get a scent. So that the day before I left was kind of setting the thought of like, we're going to be anchored to the truck a lot.
Right.
And we did do that on Saturday a little bit. But even then, I still hiked 7 miles somehow on Saturday. I don't know how that even happened. It just kind of happened. Right. I was expecting, because of what Matt had said, that we were going to be rigging a little more, I think is what you guys call it. And the weather conditions when we started, Heath told us, he said, well, we're not going to be able to rig. We're going to be walking, right?
Yeah.
Let the dogs work on the ground.
Well, the Bears the Bears are just laying up tight. By this point in the season, Bears do get road shy. They know to stay away from the roads. They've been chased. A lot of them have, and some of them are like the honey badger. They just don't care. It's like, okay, yeah, I've been walking across this road and I'm not going to let a box full of hounds stop me today. But a lot of times the really smart bears will go into more secluded, unmolested areas. I believe that you can pressure bears away from roads and things like that. So,
yeah. Well, we were plenty away from a road.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting the hiking, honestly. I was just surprised at how much we ended up walking out of the gate on day one.
Yeah, so we got up there to where we met with Heath and the rest of the hunting group, and then you guys split off, and my day started with chaos right off the bat. I let Tough out to do his thing, and he hit something behind the cabin and took off on it. And the neighbor, Marvin, tried to kidnap my dog.
Marvin loved Tough, that's for sure. I still would like to know what Marvin fed Tough for breakfast.
Oh, I know.
I'm going to bet on fried bologna. I bet it's fried bologna. I don't know. I just got a feeling.
I'll bet you're right. And that's why Tough was like, can I go back to Marvin's?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He's living the dream over there.
No doubt. We actually brought him home, and I've been working on him on being a house dog this week. So he's been living the life. After Marvin ruined him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, me and Derek may have also ruined him because he just that on Saturday in the truck, he's just getting pet nonstop.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a nut. He's a nut. But, okay, so we met Heath. I had to go back and find Tough because I thought, man, I just can't let him run around over there all day.
Yeah.
And when I got back, you guys are already 3 miles in, you know? And so how did that part of the hunt go that may have surprised you or something you're like, man, that was cool?
Yeah, so, well, first step, I was shocked at how fast Heath moves. I mean, I was expecting a little more casual, not casual, but I mean, I don't know. I didn't time Heath, but if we hadn't been busting through Laurel, this dude's probably doing a 17-minute mile, which on hiking in that terrain is fast, right? I mean, the dude was just hoofing it. And I think he's probably a little taller than me, got a little bit longer stride, but I mean, I'm having to like bust tail to keep up with Heath at times. And Taylor, the other guy we're with, is just a hiking fool too.
He's an animal.
These guys both surprised me at the pace. And then I got thinking about it. I'm like, well, they're trying to keep up with the dogs a little bit, right? Like you can't keep up with them, but we're keeping this pace to keep up with them. And so
part of that, Brad, is their dogs are in the hunt, you know, and you guys are kind of like, why the heck are we walking so fast? You know, you have no expectation.
Yeah.
You have no investment, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
Oh no, I get it.
So it's like when I take people coon hunting the first time, they're like, "Why are we out here walking around in the dark? Why are we walking so fast? Why is he flying up this hill? Why is he doing this?" And I don't intentionally do that. It's just that I'm stoked because I know what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, so I've got the adrenaline going. I've got the expectation of the hunt. I know what can happen. And people that have never experienced it are just kind of like, I don't even know why we're out here for sure. And I really don't know why we're walking this fast.
Yeah. Well, so obviously I knew why we're out there. I just didn't know how it was going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we set an aggressive pace. And I mean, this is part of what makes it hard to gear for is, you know, aggressive pace, busting through some Laurel, nothing like what I would have been doing in an hour. Right. But we're busting through Laurel. And you get a little hot, you know, I never took my toboggan off because I was, you know, you start taking stuff off. Plus it was orange. You start taking stuff off. You got to put it somewhere. So I'm wearing it the whole time. I kind of rolled it up, but then you stop for 20 minutes with sweat and ice on you. Now you're getting cold again. Yeah. And that's a little bit of what makes it tricky. You know, I wouldn't say I'm like unfamiliar with the hiking side. You know, I told you, well, even a few weeks ago, I did like 10 miles the other day, 2,700 feet of elevation. Like, I feel like I could hang in that.
Sure.
It was just surprising to me, at the pace at which we went. Like we were hiking, you know, it's kind of like, I'll draw an analogy to, I can always tell a great point guard in basketball when they can move as fast with the ball as anybody that's following them, right? John Wall, when he played at Kentucky, I was always amazed that he could outrun somebody with a ball, and the other person's just trying to keep up. When I'm hiking with no dogs or a light pack, I could do that pace and it feels fine. These guys doing it, we're all carrying guns or packs, and we got dogs that we're like, and we're still moving at that pace. It surprised me. I just wouldn't have thought that we would have been moving that quick. And then, so to tell the story a little bit, we started that trailhead. These other guys started the trailhead. They dropped down, I think, from the other side. And we go out. We're kind of along the top of the ridge or this creek. We're about 700 yards up from the creek. And first thing I figure out is that these dogs are running way further out than I thought they would. So Heath is kind of telling us, you know, him and Taylor are really kind of talking back and forth. Derek and I are just listening and learning. And the first thing I learned is how far they go. So I'm like, wow, that dog is like 1,000 yards away right now. And it was cool watching Heath. Heath can tell, and you too. I saw this on Saturday, but just from the way they're running on the GPS, you guys can tell if it's chasing a scent or if it's on an animal. I thought that was really cool.
Right.
and then you can tell when it's weird or something's off and doesn't feel right. And so we stopped a couple times because the dogs started, kind of getting hung up. And then at one point we had been standing for like 20 minutes, and Heath was on the fence of whether or not he thought the dog was actually treed. I think we even had another dog down in there that was showing treed maybe 30 yards away. So we were kind of starting to think it was a sow cub scenario.
Okay.
Right. And so that, I think, if I remember correctly, Derek's recollection of this is a little tighter than mine. But I think Derek said, well, like eventually the other dog came back. And Kate was the one that was showing the most promise. And I can't remember I guess it's Spook, right?
Yeah.
That's his other dog he runs. So Spook came back. And at that point, I mean, it felt like we probably stopped for 30 minutes trying to figure out what Kate was doing. And Heath, you guys are funny because you'll be like real pissed at the dog. You'll be like, "Come on, Kate," and then you're like, kind of you give him a little cut down, right? A little bad mouth, and then you'll kind of feel bad about it in a few minutes, and you're like, "Nah, she's a good dog." You guys all do that. I noticed that about every one of you. Like you love these dogs so much. It'd be like if I told my son something mean and then I feel bad a few minutes later and come back and apologize to him. But Heath was kind of in that mode of like, stupid dog, right? He didn't say that, but it's kind of like I could see him getting frustrated. But then we heard the first just real faint, right? And I think you even told me Heath's dogs are not very vocal. Right? Is that am I
on track?
The right
on
one?
Track, they're not. They're when they're treed, then they're a lot more vocal.
Yeah, so we were, but that first, heard it, and then all of a sudden, one of the coolest parts of the day, all these dogs, as a newbie, Heath's telling me they're working, but I can't really tell. They look like dogs just being happy.
We could have told you anything.
Yeah, I know.
Like, oh yeah, they're down there.
Oh, totally. Yeah, but like when they heard that first bark, I mean, stiff, like ready to rock and roll, right? I mean, it's like watching.
So Heath was leading some dogs. He had Kate and Spook we call that free cast. They were free casting out there trying to find a bear, and Heath was leading some dogs too.
Heath had two other dogs with him on whatever you guys call the double,
the coupler.
When they're kind of the coupler. Yeah. So he had two couple. Taylor had. I thought Taylor only had a couple dogs, but there's just dogs everywhere. So and Taylor's behind me. So Derek said Taylor might have had four.
Yeah.
What do you call the two that go scout? Like, what's your two? What'd you say? The free caster? You kind of have your two that you like to free cast.
Yeah,
right?
The ones you trust. Yeah. You don't
exactly.
You don't turn a bunch of pups loose and not know what you're going to end up with. Like,
well, that was the other thing that was amazing to me, though, is that you guys I was talking to Heath a lot about that and Taylor. I'm like, so you're kind of once the free casting dog is on it, you're letting the other young ones go so they can learn what they're smelling and looking for. And I thought that was so cool. But yeah, basically like when Kate got on it, I think Spook, I can't remember if Spook was already down I think Spook got released and went to her. And then Taylor, waiting on that when you could hear it again, letting that next dog go, letting the next dog go. That was one of the coolest things for me was you could see just like a military service member sitting in a base, and then all of a sudden there's a shot, right? They're like, boom, go time. Or a fireman, like, boom, there's an alarm, we're going. It was just like that. These dogs are so smart. No one track minded. I learned that you guys have a hard time pulling them back once they're in that mode. It's like Cajun, right? Like, once he was on it on Saturday, like, they just are ready to go at all times. And I think you even told me on Saturday, it's like, oh, he'll go until he just runs out of energy altogether, which is amazing. But so this is where it got funny. Mostly we've been on the AT, right? And so like it's a trail, and these, it's not like that. It wasn't doable, right? I mean, we're busting through some stuff, but it hadn't been bad. And then Heath looks at me and Derek, and he goes, we can go a mile and a half around, but, now I get that he just wanted to get to his dogs because he thought they were with a bear. And he's like, but I don't think we should. And he goes, I'm sorry. And Derek and I were like, what are you sorry for? Let's go, dude. Like, we showed up to work. And he said it again. He goes, I'm sorry. And he just goes down. I'm like, that was weird. We get down in this stuff, man. We drop, I guess, 700 yards down. First 200 are cake. It's open forest. We start getting down into the laurel and the rhododendron, and we go straight down to the creek and then start walking the creek. It is thick as all get out, and we probably went along the creek for about 5 minutes. And the other thing I learned is it's really hard for a beginner to tell how close the dogs are by sound.
Mm-hmm.
I could not. I mean, multiple times I thought any minute these dogs are going to pop out, and we were still a 2-minute walk, right? Like they're just so loud. They carry so well, rather. And dude, we were going through this stuff. Heath and Taylor turned into like spider monkeys. They're just like boom, boom, boom. I was kidding Taylor afterwards. I was like, dude, you're like James Bond over here rolling around on the ground to get under the laser or something, you know? And Derek got stuck.
Jason
Derek
Bourne.
had that. Yeah, it was like that. And Derek, who's a really skilled, adept hunter, totally out of his element in this. We just didn't know what we were doing, right? He got stuck with that gun scabbard at one point, and I was kind of kidding him. If anybody's seen Toy Story, he's like Buzz trying to get under the fence with the rocket, you know? He's like, go on, leave me, I'll catch up, which is what Heath did. Heath left him, I think, eventually, because we were right there. But Taylor and I show up first, and that is my first time seeing dogs treating anything. So I'm walking up, and there's just this scene of chaos. And it was so cool. Like, these dogs are everywhere, but they're all looking. Like, I knew where to look because they're all seeing it. And, you know, first time I've actually laid eyes on a bear in a hunting scenario. I've seen them in the wild, but as a tourist or something, right? It's like a different vibe when you see that thing up in the tree. And this proceeds to unleash, like, the most 10 minutes of chaos in my hunting life, right? Like I'm sitting there, we got there before Heath. Taylor and I went up the mountain at one point, and Heath tried to stay on the creek, and maybe to save Derek. I don't know. But we got there a good 5 minutes before them. And so I start looking and at this bear, which I believe was probably 30 feet in the air. Mm-hmm. And immediately I know I have not prepared like I thought I had, because this is not a broadside shot. Like I don't know why I did this. I also thought I'd be able to back up more. I didn't realize how thick we'd be hunting in this cover. You know, I even brought the wrong gun. I mean, just to show how unprepared I was. I brought that 30-06, and Heath laughed at me. He's like, dude, you ain't packing that 30-06 through this stuff.
Right.
And not to mention it's scoped. Like, all the problems with what I thought was going to be. I thought I'd be able to back up from a tree and shoot it with a scope.
When you said 30-06, I thought, well, we'll throw it in there and then we'll sort this out in camp. I knew you weren't going to be packing it either. But at that point, we'd already had like 100 text messages back and forth about gear, and you said, I'll bring 30-06, and I was just like, okay, you know.
Whatever. Yeah, it's like whatever, because it didn't matter because you guys had so much good gear. I was packing Heath's 30-30, which I hadn't shot a 30-30 in a long time. It took me like a second. I'm like getting familiar with it before we went back out, which is partially what happens next, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
It had a red dot on it, so I started trying to figure out how I'm going to shoot this bear. And I mean, well, your audience can't see, but I hold up my hand of like a dinner plate size shooting lane. And that's about all I could find. And so I move all around this tree. On one side of it's a creek, so there's not really a whole lot of options here. And I finally find a spot. I sit down, and I just start trying to run through my head, like looking at this thing of where I'm going to shoot it. And Derek and I talked about this afterwards. The bear turns into a black blob at that distance, and it's still early. We're under a tree, a little bit of a canopy. I know there's not leaves like there is normally, but it's still like it's darker on this creek bed, right? Because all the trees are still kind of keeping some light out.
It was only what time was it? It was only about 7:15.
Yeah. So the light was not quite down in there to where I could see very well. I can't see a leg. I can't see anything on this bear. It is just this black blob sitting on this tree. And, you know, we talked about shooting, and Derek had told me middle, but that's like broadside Western hunt, right? Like, it's like a whitetail you'd shoot broadside. And so I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, I can't even see middle. So I told Heath afterwards, I said, I have this thing that I do where I'm like a meat guy. I love the meat. I always try to preserve meat.
We'll get to that part when we get to the pack out.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there looking at this bear, and I'm like, well, I know if I shoot him in the front shoulder, I'm going to have a quicker dead bear. I'll hit vitals, but I'm probably going to blow through that right shoulder the way he's sitting on me, and I might lose that whole ham, or at least most of it. And I really did not want to do that.
Yeah.
And so Heath gets there, and then randomly there's other dogs showing up, which I didn't anticipate. I mean, at this point, I'm guessing we had 10 or 12 dogs on this tree.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, I was kind of surprised. I wasn't like really distracted by the barking. They weren't distracting. What it was doing was making it really hard for Heath to communicate with me.
Yeah.
And I had told him before, I said, I can't size a bear and tell if it's a shooter. You're going to have to tell me if it's a shooter. And I will not shoot until you tell me to. You're the guide for me right now, because I need you to tell me what to do. So it's so loud that Heath is having to shout. But that adds like over a minute of this kind of communication, it starts to add some intensity to it. Like I feel like he's yelling at me, and I know he wasn't, but like it's just like everything's getting amped up, right? And so he's like, shoot, and so I take the first shot, and I gut shot the bear because I put it just a hair too far back, and the bear, I didn't realize this until I saw the video that Derek had. The bear starts moving like a lot.
Yeah, it did.
On this tree, and he goes up. And I shot again, and I also felt better. I thought I was missing in my head.
Yeah.
I hit the bear every time. I'm hitting him. I don't know where the second shot went.
And we skinned it. It had a lot of holes in it.
Yeah, it did. It did. I think the second shot hit him closer up in his chest. He had 2 chest shots. But what's weird is, like, it must have still not struck vitals because these things are just so big. That's really – like, it would have been I don't know. There's just so many places a bullet can go on a bear, and so it's such a large mass, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I hit him up top. He was moving up, and then he starts moving again. And there was 4 shots overall, and the last one, I'm pretty sure it was the last one after seeing the video that blew his bottom leg out because he was moving up. I was aiming for middle again. I haven't picked up, I'm a slow learner here. But I'm aiming there, and I think when he moved, I shot him in the back because that's when he falls, right? It is freaking chaos at that point. I mean, I can see it all in slow motion of this bear hitting, and like in real time, it felt slow motion of watching this bear land, running towards Heath and Heath's dogs, and then it just vanished.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Derek's got the video. He pans over to me, and I think I said an explicative, and I'm just kind of wide-eyed of like, oh my God, what just happened? This bear just vanished, and like the chaos that ensued and all the shooting. And I get up and walk down, and immediately he's trying to wrangle dogs, right? Because you guys had some rough run-ins. I think he had some dogs get roughed up earlier in the week, so I think that was kind of heavy on his mind. And I go up, and I don't even see the bear. I'm looking out thinking it ran a little bit, but it died right there on the ledge. That thing dropped 12 to 15 feet down into a creek at like a basketball goal. It's like it fell off the top of a basketball goal. You know, and so I'm looking at this thing, and immediately I regret gear decisions because I'm looking at that bear in the creek, and I'm like, I'm about to get wet, right? And I knew we had hiked in for an hour and a half, so I know I've got that much to walk out, and so. You know, we start strategizing a little bit, but again, you can't hear anything because the dogs don't stop. I mean, they just, you know, they're going, everybody's kind of shouting still. It just makes everything a lot more intense. You know, deer hunting is so different because you shoot and there's quiet. Mm-hmm. Maybe you hear it thrash for a minute, but you know, I always have a moment of like self-reflecting and like I'm a little jittery. You get that adrenaline going, but you can kind of sit there and work through it in your head. The chaos does not stop on hound hunting. Like these dogs are just going. Everybody's worried about the wounded bear. Like everything was just very, very, and the intensity did not come down until we had dragged it across the creek. But even then, I've still got a couple loose dogs running around biting the bear on the head and on the butt.
Right.
And, it's like they're letting the bear know, you know, we won. But what
I think
is funny,
it's so cool to get your perspective on all of it because a lot of the things you're talking about are just things that. You know, we've seen so many times that we just take it for granted, you know, and it's not that we lose the value of it, but after you've seen that so many times, it becomes a frustration instead of a fascination, you know, like when you're trying to drag a bear and you've got, you know, 3 hounds, three hounds that are trying to chew on it and stuff. It's like, get off that bear, you know? Yeah.
Well, Heath even said, he's like, we got to get the dogs out of here because they won't stop. And I'm like, stop barking or what? And then we get down to the bear. And Kate is just like chomping on this thing. Kate's the one that did all the work.
Kate's an amazing dog.
So she was, and I got a picture with her and Heath over the bear. But so this, what's funny, Heath was kind of like a little Buddha on this day. You know, he foreshadowed that it was getting ready to get rough by saying, "I'm sorry." And Derek and I understood that about 15 minutes later of why he was sorry, because we were about to plow through some thick stuff. And then he said, you know, I never like it when somebody gets a bear this quick because they always think it's easy. And it's not easy. And I was thinking, like, well, I didn't really think of it that way, Heath, because it was early. Like, I guess you guys don't often shoot one that early in the morning is kind of what he was saying. And it was kind of funny because it's like a direct contrast to how my day ended. I didn't realize that we were about to spend, you know, so much time getting that thing out of there.
Yeah.
Like my day, Derek even said, he's like, man, I'll be honest, I thought we'd be back at the house by 1 drinking beer.
Sometimes we are.
By 1 o'clock, I was telling Derek I didn't think we were going to get the bear out of there by nightfall.
Right.
Like that's how this day goes. So it was funny because Taylor says, we have to get the dogs out of here. We can't leave them here. They're going to be, you know, too much to deal with. So Heath and I are going to take them back. Don't worry. We're not going to leave you here by yourself. We'll come back for you. And just there's a reason for this. I'm not picking on Taylor, but I didn't see Taylor again until night. Right.
Right.
So what ends up happening?
Well, that's a collective statement. We will be back for you. So
yeah, it was.
Yeah. So it's like when I talk to my wife, she's like, did you get a bear? And I'll say, yeah, we shot one. And she'll be like, well, did you shoot it? Or said, well, where's the we in that? You know, it's a collective effort. And that's the cool thing.
Totally. It's so cool. I told Derek after the end of it, I said, you earn really, like, what difference does it make who shoots? Actually, it does, because somebody else probably could have killed that bear in one shot. But what at the end of the day, everybody was chipping in. So I say that to pick on Taylor as a joke because he said we'll be back. He didn't know they were going to tree 2 more bears that
That's
day,
right.
By accident.
Right.
It was kind of funny because they were walking out, and I think before they had even gotten together, they got on another bear, and the dogs are just gone.
That was a mistake, more than likely. You know, honestly, when you've got a bear down, that's the last thing you want to happen. So, you know that
I don't think they meant to because we game planned for about 20 minutes. I don't know if the dog was on. Maybe you're saying it should have been on a lead or something. Is that what you're?
It was just a circumstantial type thing. You know, for one thing, you saw what we walked through or what you had to walk through and what you know, where we were at. You know, trying to lead dogs out of there. You want to have dogs that will follow you out like they did, like my dogs did the second day. You know, so they just come
picking up stands but still hanging.
Yeah, they just come with you, but sometimes, you know, you're walking these dogs out, they're picking up that scent on an air current, and before you know it, you've lost track of 1 or 2, and they're 150 yards, and then at that point, game on again.
Well, and these guys have picked up 2 extra dogs in this whole process, and they're trying to deal with that.
Right.
Heath and Taylor were definitely understaffed on trying to get out of there with that many dogs, I would say. I don't know anything about it, but it seems like that was probably the situation. And so I don't really still know what happened. I just know chaos ensued for them. But what's funny, we, again, underprepared. We don't have radios. We have a cell phone with OnX, but you guys don't use OnX, so we're trying to send pins back and forth throughout the day. For some reason, the coordinates weren't syncing up when you guys would type them in, and I don't know which system that was on. It could have been either one.
We're trying to take OnX coordinates and type them into a Garmin, and I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if they just don't play well together or, like you said, a different system. I don't know, but it was kind of a shit show. After that,
we were running into that with you, with Wesley. It was weird because everybody was having that issue.
Yep.
So there was some kind of breakdown there. But what's funny, so just to back up, so the game plan is Derek and I are going to take this bear from where it's sitting on this side of the creek. There ain't any going up, that we thought.
Right.
And you had kind of told me these Appalachian bear hunters like to drag out. They don't want to pack out, right? And so these guys had kind of told us like, you should just really drag it out. There's a trailhead. I thought at some point somebody said, follow the creek.
And that creek did go down. That's the one where we're walking out and you got soaked. Same creek.
Yeah. So I told Derek at about 2 hours in, we would have been better off to have a raft and just inflate it and drag the bear down the creek than what we did. So we start dragging down the creek, and the rhododendron is sitting on top of boulders. My shins are still bruised up from falling through this stuff for so long.
Yeah.
And we got to a point where we physically could not pick this 200-pound bear through this stuff. And so we talking to Wesley, and he starts saying, man, you guys could go down this creek, but it only gets thicker from where you are. I know where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts telling us to try to get up the hill a little bit to get above it. Because a lot of times that laurel and rhododendron's hanging out on the creek. It'll pop up in other places, but a lot of times it's really heavy on water like that, right?
Where you were at, it was all the way to the trail.
I've never seen it that thick, and I've been in that stuff my whole life because where we were hunting is very similar to where I grew up. And I also don't typically run down into it like we did, like to inspect it. So I'm sure it's just as thick where I'm from. I just like, why in the world would you be down there if you didn't have a dead animal and you're trying to get out of there, right? So, I don't know how long you want to go here. I can try to expedite this part of the story, but basically,
this is a good part. But let's,
this is the. I'll fast forward for what happens for the next 3 hours. Is Derek and I 1, 2, 3 heave this bear over rhododendron, through boulders, uphill, downhill, through the creek. We do that for about an hour, and then finally at one point Derek's just like, we can't do this. We got to stop. And so he calls Heath, and he's like, okay, but I got a dog running behind you guys. And so that the dogs chase a bear 50 yards behind us, and then we're sitting there. I'm like, I don't even have a gun loaded, right? Like I've shot all my shots at the bear that's laying here. And so Derek kind of gets ready, and then a few more. We sit there for 20 minutes just talking about what we should do. We wanted to pack out, but I told you I didn't bring my pack.
Yeah.
So I didn't, even if we started that, I didn't have any way to contribute other than just carrying like a raw ham here through the woods. And so Wesley encouraged us to start moving up the hill. 3 hours into this, Chris, we had moved like 150 yards from the original strip. Maybe. That might be generous.
You guys did amazing work to get it as high as you did where he was.
Well, you mentioned it rained all day the day before. The mountain is just sloppy. There were a couple times we would get going up this hill's not even accurate enough, straight up, and the bear would start sliding back down, dude, or it's rolling back down, and like Derek and I are falling on top of the bear trying to stop it from going back and erasing the last 20 minutes of effort. And we got to a point to where the problem we couldn't stand. And when you lose the ability to stand, you lose the advantage of your body weight. And so we're trying to drag this thing on our knees and up elevation.
Right.
The guns are now becoming a problem again because they're getting stuck. So I told Derek, I was like, I'm just calling it. We got to get out of this stuff and get it up. We're going to get it up to that rock where we can stand up, and we're going to go find help. I said, I don't even know what they're going to do because they're not going to be able to stand up in here either, but we're going to have to figure something out, and I think it's going to be a pack out. Dude, we start walking up to find the trail. 200 yards, maybe 250.
It was 100. I think it was 163. Actually, it felt like 250.
It felt like 400
exactly
because there was some cliff drops if you weren't careful coming back in.
Yeah.
But it's very steep. It's very thick stuff. All of it is frozen and you're getting soaked. So we get out, and to fast forward the story, I meet up with Wesley, like I said earlier, and he's kind of looking at us like, why are these guys soaked to the bone? It hasn't been raining.
Yeah.
We meet up with you. We meet up with Ariel, and the team mindset. We really started to see what was going on. We couldn't hear y'all's radio chat.
Yeah.
We thought we were just left for dead. So you guys have been working the whole time coordinating. I also didn't realize that where Wesley came in from, and Ariel, like you guys were so far away.
Yeah.
For miles, and so finally. The fast forward.
Plus the elevation change from the parking lot where we parked.
Oh God!
To get up to
the hike in would have been brutal. I hiked down a lot easier. But so you finally got there, and we start caping and work or skinning and all that. And thankfully you had some bags to get the meat into. We had a tarp that Ariel had brought, and that was critical in getting that cape out of there, or the hide out of there, because it was, getting caught on it was a process. Like that alone. Fast forward, I said we called it at 12:30. This is 3:30 when we're getting down.
You guys are up there on the mountain. You're like, these guys really have left us for dead, and the whole time on our end, what's going on is, Heath's coordinating a four-wheeler and landowner permission to get a four-wheeler up closer to you. And we're trying to decide which direction to come in and what we need to bring with us. And Ariel stopped and bought a couple things to help the process. Yeah. And you and Derek, poor Derek, he's like, I feel like all day people have been leaving us, and talking about that. It's like, man, you have no idea what was going on the other end. And at one time we cussed Heath for even letting you shoot that bear down in there. Me and Wesley both did. Yeah. It's like, why in the world would Heath let them shoot this bear down there? And so we get it up there and we start the process of skinning and doing all that stuff. And I'm not going to lie, back feet on a bear always give me absolute fits.
It doesn't help when somebody shot through half of one.
Yeah.
I don't know who that was.
I don't either. I have no idea.
Some other guy.
So it took way longer. A good skinner would have had that thing skinned out for you a lot quicker. But then it got to the point where I'm kind of pressuring you guys. It's like, hey, I'm not trying to pressure you, but if we don't get this bear out of here, we're going to be walking this trail out in the dark.
Well, and you saw I told you I love the meat. You saw my go-to. I'm kicked in of I'm getting every scrap of meat.
Yeah, you're picking this thing like a vulture. And I was just like,
I do.
Brad, come on, man.
Yeah.
We got to.
Yeah, you're like, hey, we got an hour and a half, maybe 2 hour walk out of here, and we have less than that of daylight. And I'm like, yeah. But do these things have inner tenderloins?
Yeah. I'm like, screw those inner tenderloins. We're going to be walking in the dark. We got a lot of meat off this bear. Let's roll.
We did, dude. I'll tell you what. I pulled close to 50 pounds of grind.
Nice.
I saved 6 roasts, five or 6 roasts. I had 25 pounds of fat, and then the hide.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a whole lot left behind.
There wasn't.
I didn't get those inner tenderloins. I got to looking at them. They do have them. Like I assume they did. I figured the anatomy is pretty similar to a deer, but where we had dragged, they were so covered up with crap. And kind of even just had, they had sticks on them and everything.
Yeah, everything.
And they were a lot small. It was kind of interesting to see the size difference on some muscle groups compared to a deer. That bear at 200 pounds was the same size. My deer might have even been heavier this year, but the bear's back straps were small.
Yeah, what a letdown, right?
Well, I didn't care. I just was surprised. I thought this big, powerful animal would have big back straps. And then the deer's back straps are ginormous, right? So it was kind of cool because I'm a meat guy. I process all my own meat. I love that part of it. I actually, when we got home, I didn't even tell you, Chris, I was up until like 1 a.m. doing all that night, going through everything. But that part of it was really cool for me too. But, at that point, we had a long hike out of there. We crossed the creek. I had wet boots. That felt like a breeze compared to the whole day prior. But you guided us out of there to the truck, and then some guys, I see the truck coming, and it's this glorious sight.
Yeah.
Derek called this out. He's like, how cool is it that those guys waited for hours for us down there just to say congrats? Like, that was the most selfless thing, was having Hot Rod walk up and give me a beer, and, Ariel's out there playing catch with her dog. I'm like, this is a family event. You guys operate as a family unit, and Derek and I even kind of talked, like, there's parts of that had like Native American vibes to it, right? Of like, this was a group effort. The group wins. It's not about, who kills the biggest buck. A lot of times in whitetail culture, this whole group effort can get lost when you're hunting with buddies. But it's just none of that was there with this group. I thought it was the coolest hunting group I've been with in terms of selflessness.
I hunt a lot of different places and have the opportunity to hunt with a lot of different groups. And that group there, they catch a lot of bears, and there's a reason why they do it. It's because they don't care who gets the credit. They put all that aside. They put and hunting is full of this rugged individualism mindset. You wanted this solitude, and that's why we hunt a lot of times. And I do enjoy getting off to myself and starting bear and doing stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's all about the team. Pulling the team together and seeing that. And I have the same feeling every time I walk out and I see everybody. You wish they were up there on the mountain with you, enduring some of that, but they endured it the day before. They knew that by the time they got up there, it was going to be over, so it would have been wasted effort. And it's so cool. It's so cool. So,
oh no, the other thing on Saturday when we got a bear down, nobody even knew who killed it. Like, it wasn't like on a whitetail. If I was on my group thread, it's like I killed a big buck, right? Everybody would be doing that. It's just a flip of the mindset of how selfless it is. Even I still don't know who killed the bear.
I don't either.
Like
I'm not sure. I don't either.
You guys,
now that you mention it,
but that's what I'm saying is so cool, because we were even asking. Derek and I are still in that individualism mindset, like you're talking about, of like, yeah, but who shot it? And it's like, who cares?
Yeah, the
group treat a bear. I learned a lot about. I thought that was a really cool aspect of it. And I will like, Heath out there on the first day watching him. He's coordinating like a head football coach of tactics and coming up with a game plan. And I anticipate that the Bears are going to do this, so I need you to be 2 steps ahead and be over here. I couldn't believe how much of that was part of the process. Mm-hmm. People who say you just wait until the dogs get the thing treed. I think that's likely people who haven't experienced it. Even I posted on LinkedIn that I went on a bear hunt and talked a little bit about it and the perspective shift. And I only had one guy give me hate. Actually 2. One of them said something like, you might as well hunt over I'd rather hunt baited bear than to hunt with dogs, because the dogs do all the work. And I was like, man, that's just like none of the experience that I had on either day.
Right.
I mean, and none of it, There was I told Derek, I said I don't ever want to knock one type of hunt against another, but this was definitely harder than my whitetail hunts. And you can go out and not have hunted or even been on the ground for a year. I could show up and I could shoot a 180-inch deer just by happenstance. That does not happen with what you guys do. If you didn't train those dogs year round, if you didn't put in all the effort, if you didn't have a good game plan on day of, you're not getting a bear. And you guys actually talked about how there's other groups down there who aren't having anywhere near the bears that you guys are having on the exact same property, right? And so, to me, the whole thing, like the whole argument is dead. Like Derek told you too, we'll be defenders of this until we die now, because I've seen, like, he's crazy. He's talking about going off to New York and just running bears to keep his dogs sharp. Yep. And Taylor's like, yeah, you got to run them every week or so, or they start to lose their edge. And I'm like, every week? Like, I don't even know if my dog was fed this morning. And you guys are over here on like next level of treat. I mean, they're athletes. That's what I really came to understand is these dogs are the NFL of dogs, right?
I tried to lay that out a little bit for you to give you some perspective on that. What you got to see, and I think I said this, but imagine how many times those dogs and those hunters have gone into that same area and done the same thing to catch a bear. And it starts all the way back. Like when I'm breeding hounds, I'm already thinking 3 generations from the cross, from the breeding that I'm doing now, from the cross I'm making now, of what I'm going to try to do. So there's this huge investment that's never seen, and it can't. It's like you've talked about it before, Brad. You've talked about telling the story, not just the success. Showing the whole journey. That's why Heath's show is called The Journey, because we want to capture everything from the time that puppy's born to what he goes through, his developmental stages, all this different stuff, and how much time's invested there, so we can take guys from go wild to go out there and have a successful hunt. But also we want the world to know that it's not that It's not just that easy. You know, I'm not walking in and putting you in a tree stand where I've had trail cams out and, you know, you zeroed your rifle the week before and shot maybe 20 rounds and now you're ready to kill a deer. And I'm not knocking any other hunting either.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Well, even the whitetail guys, I get on guys who, I hate the whole public land versus private land thing because the people don't realize, like, where I hunt on private is more congested and pressured than where I hunt on public back home.
Yeah.
And people will argue with me that that's not true. But I tell you what, when I go out on opening morning here in northern Kentucky near Louisville, I'll hear 100 shots before 8 a.m.
Right.
If I do that back home, I don't hear that kind of pressure.
Right.
And you know, the guys that work hard on private land, like you said with whitetail, you know, they have their own journey there. I don't think it's ever really easy. You can luck into things, but like I worked hard for that bear. I didn't do what you guys had done all year long. I showed up, but I mean, dude, like I said, that was the hardest hunt I've ever been on.
That's exactly right. You know, it's every person's hunting experience is their own personal journey, and successful hunters are ones who are not afraid to put in the work. There's work involved in all of it.
Success is fluid. It shapes to each hunter's glass, right? A guy who's been hunting whitetail 30 years might have a bigger glass that needs to be full. It takes a little bit more to get him excited about a buck. You take a kid or an adult who's never done it, shot glass is all just enough, right? It doesn't take a lot to get them excited. And, you know, I think that's one of the coolest things about it is how many different ways you can enjoy it and how accessible success is with it. You know, I see in Go Wild all the time. I love seeing guys post their first archery buck.
Right.
And it'll be a rookie and they still are proud of it and they should be. You know, like that's to me what makes hunting really cool is that there's always a new way to shape it and to try something different. I told Derek, I said, I've really, you know, last year I'd never goose hunted, went up and did chase some geese in Michigan, thought that was really cool. This year I got to do a bear. I said, I am going to continue to find new things now. Like this is just kind of set a fire under me to make sure I keep challenging myself. And not to mention, man, bear meat's really good. Like I might be back down. Oh dude. Yeah. Well, I've only had one meal with it, but we did I've eaten one cooked meal and then some leftovers of it. We did tacos and my wife was raving about it.
No kidding. Great.
Yeah. My kids loved it. My kids ate it up in a quesadilla. So, that meat will go to great use.
Awesome.
So that like now I've also got another game meat that I'm interested in. I really like it. I told Derek after I shot it, I said, I don't know. I might fall in your all's category where I might have more fun on the chase up until the shot. And then I ate the meat and I'm like, no, I would definitely want to come down and shoot one again for the meat, like, or at least get some with somebody else's. Like if I could get a couple cuts or something, like I loved it that much.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I always, I don't mind telling this story. Some people call me a little bit of a wuss for having these thoughts, but like I saw that bear treed, and just like with a deer I'm getting ready to shoot, like I have a little bit of remorse that I'm about to end a life. Like that's actually my least favorite part of the whole thing. And people that don't hunt don't get that. Mm-hmm. You guys get it though, because I'm talking like, it's like Heath's like, I haven't shot a bear in 5 years.
Right.
And he's like, I just love like this part up to this part is what's fun for me. And, you know, I think, and you kind of said something like, if you hadn't, you know, you're not taking them every year either.
Right.
And I thought
I've never shot a bear.
Like,
I've never shot a bear. It's not that I wouldn't do. It's just that every situation that I've been in, you know, there's a guy from like you there that's never experienced this, or my daughter shot a bear, you know, that we treat because I let her shoot it. But if I thought I was going to shoot one on Monday, you know, one that came out of the tree and was mixing it up with the dogs. And if he would have stayed there for even probably he felt the sights on him because I was drawing down on him. And as soon as I brought the rifle up, he broke and took off and everything was okay. But
I thought that was really cool the way you explained that to me on Saturday. Because Derek and I were both shocked to hear that you had never done it. But you said, well, I've always got somebody else who wants to have that experience more. A young kid, a guy like me who comes in to see what it's like. And I just think you guys give so much on that. But I do want to stress, you know, not your audience listening to this will get it, but people, just on the chance that somebody from my audience comes over and checks out your podcast for the first time, I want to stress that I think most hunters who are thoughtful about this, and there's some that don't care and they're bloodthirsty. There are those people that just like to kill. I don't think that's most people. I think most people really, Derek said the same thing, because I kind of told him, I said, it was a little bit of a moment of like, that bear was so majestic looking that you hated to end it. And I had that moment with my whitetail this year too. That was the most majestic looking deer. He'd come out full rut, stomping, big swollen neck. And, you part of you realizes that you're going to end his story. And it's like, I don't like that. I don't need that like for an ego. But the second I get up on these things, it's meat time. Like I changed that whole attitude. I understand, like I'm grateful for them. And I always have a little bit of a moment, even with the bear, once we kind of got through all the chaos of getting out of the creek and everything. And I was kind of standing there with him, waiting on Heath to come back or something. I don't remember, kind of just patting him on the head of like, thank you. I promise I'm going to do right by you, and you're going to get eaten.
Yeah.
We're going to enjoy this. And my wife sometimes asks me why I keep every deer skull, even if it's not a big. I shot a little forky on accident, or not forky, a spike on accident last year, thinking it was a doe, and I got its skull cleaning up in my garage right now. And she's like, "Why do you keep these things if they're not trophies?" She's not a hunter at all, so she has no concept of this. And I said, "Well, because I get to honor that thing every time I look at that. Like I get to remember him, remember that story. I get to tell somebody else his story. And for me, that's a tribute, that hunters, only a hunter understands. Nobody ever does a tribute to the Costco chicken that they ate, right? Like nobody thinks of it that way. I've never met anybody that way. But,
my wife values them.
My wife likes them, but she also, if we don't get through it all, she'll toss it, and she doesn't think twice about it. And like for me, if I had part of my deer I didn't eat, I would be agonizing, right? I just think that there's a thoughtfulness in hunters in general that most people don't understand. And there was a thoughtfulness among you guys that I think even hunters don't understand. If I were to boil what I'm trying to say, I think down quickly, I think there's just there's a whole different level. I think a lot of people look at Houndsman and think you guys are bloodthirsty, want to get out there and just make it easier and get a quick kill. What amazed me is the number of times you've had a shot this year and didn't kill. That to me was the coolest thing is the number of bears you've treed. And I think I was the 6th bear this season, or in December, or whatever that time frame was. Out of like 40 some bears, you've only taken 6, and you're trying to take. Derek and I were also impressed that you guys are out there self-policing. The loss is 100 pounds. You're trying to only do 200, trying to find old boars. You're trying to, even if it's legal, it doesn't mean you're going to do it. You guys are really good stewards of the land and the wildlife. And it was an honor to get to spend 2 days with you, kind of learning from you guys.
Wow. Can you believe that it is 2023? I'm going to start 2023 off better than I did 2022. I'm going to do all of my inventory on my gear. I'm going to look at all that stuff. I'm going to make sure that everything I've got for this year is up to par, up to snuff. We just did our Patreon giveaways. Seth posted those, held those on a Facebook Live. We got that all wrapped up for 2022. We had some great winners. We gave away some great prizes. We gave away gift certificates for Old South dog boxes. We gave away books. We gave away a rough cut, and we gave away a Cajun Lights Rougarou. And I was really excited to be able to give that light away. Rougarou from Cajun Lights is their highest end light, and it's got a laser built in. I mean, it is a super light, I'm telling you. And it's backed by one of the best guys in the business. L.W. Nixon is a great guy. Cajun Lights is going to stand behind the lights that they offer you. Our Patreon supporters, you've got a special code that you can use for a light, but you're gonna be happy with that light. I've got the Bayou. I've seen the Cajun in action, and I've got the Micro Gator. I've used all of them. I love all of them, and they're adequate lights. He's also dropping coats and vests, and I mean, he's got Houndsman XP hats there. And the good thing is he's going to be at the Grand American this week. He's going to be set up in the vendor barn, so you can actually go by and meet LW and find out why you need to do business with this guy. LW is a super dude. He's going to bring his family with him, I assume, and you're going to meet the whole family and see where you're spending your money. So check out Cajun Lights. You won't be disappointed. I know I love mine. And I love my new coat, too. Check out that new coat they've got going on. They've got dogs or treed products. Paws are protected. Dogs are hydrated. Anything that you need for hunting with your hounds. Cajun Lights and Cajun Outdoors has that stuff. And they'll have it in the booth this week at the Grand American. Check them out, folks. Man, it was an honor having you guys. And we've tried to talk. I've tried to use this platform on this podcast so many times to talk about the things that you just said. You know, when we engage with wildlife at that level, with that investment, with the passion that we have, it's at a level that someone who has never hunted will never understand. Our investment is so great, and emotional investment, financial investment, time investment, and it's all because we love this wildlife. We love everything from a raccoon to a black bear to a mountain lion. You know, it's all about, like you talk about fulfillment of the hunt. For me, fulfillment of the hunt is watching my dogs perform well. And I didn't get a lot of that joy this last week. I had kind of a week that was pretty rough. I didn't get any dogs in on Friday at all. So I've got dogs riding around in the back of the truck. Part of it was because of my own mistake with Tough, you know, and I had to go back and take care of that. But for me, the fulfillment is you take this hound that has been bred for a specific purpose, and you see him fulfilling his purpose. And you know that the hours you put in and the work that you put in all comes together at that moment. And I think it's funny that, you know, you say when you got to the tree, it was chaos. And for us, that's the most controlled part of the entire hunt. You know, the game's where you want it. The dogs are where they need to be. Everything's good here. You know, everything leading up to that can be extremely chaotic. So that perspective is interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. Coming from a deer hunter, though, I told Derek, we were talking about this on the way back. I said, you know, I really my preferred way to, and this is maybe if there's any conflict with this whole thing, and I'll just be like, this is the thing I thought about. It's that bear knew I was there, mm-hmm. and I think that's where I was a little. I like taking an animal that has no idea it's about to die. That's where there's a little bit of conflict in my mind of like, did I like that as much as deer hunting? And again, I'm not knocking. I'm just trying to be real. I think that's where there was a little bit of a debate for me of how much like that. I think that's the big difference in a Western hunt, really, mm-hmm. a black bear is that bear has been in a fight and knows that it's in trouble, right? And I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying, like, if we're real here, I think that's where a little bit of the narrative.
That's interesting. I've never thought. I've never really dial it down to that level to think about that. But I absolutely know what you mean. You know, I've seen those bears.
I think there's just something. And I'm not a philosopher here, Chris. I did almost minor in philosophy. I'm one credit shy of it. But I'm not. I'm not trying to get to that level with you per se, but there's just something that was really that if anything was really different besides all the work, besides how active it was, that part of it kind of surprised me when I got to that tree of realizing I'm like, this bear knows that like it's in trouble and at risk, and I've always prided myself with whitetail when I can make a quick, clean kill. Mm-hmm. The animal dies fast. It had no. I loved this deer this year because peak of existence for a buck, right? Yeah. I see that doe. I smell that doe. I'm about to breed that doe. This is my jam. This is my property. I've been fighting. I've got torn up ears. He had 4-inch cuts on his back where he'd been battling bucks. He was the bad mofo on that property and was at his peak existence when I took him and totally unaware of me.
Right.
I really like, there's something that I like about that. And I'm not trying to this is not a knock on hound hunting. It was just very different when I got to that tree and I'm looking the bear in the eyes and he knows that I'm not good.
Yeah.
Right. Like he knows that something.
And every bear,
is off.
Bears will react differently, you know, and guys that have a lot of experience can, and I think there's something primal about it too. Because I think like the bear that I walked into on Monday, he was only 8 feet off the ground, and he had no idea I was there. And as soon as he did know I was there, his demeanor completely changed. Before he's safe, he's looking down at the dogs, and he's thinking, okay, I'm good. But as soon as he locked eyes with me, you can see it in a video I posted, ears went back, he chomped it, he chomped his mouth and woofed a little bit. And right then he was, that language was like, you're not supposed to be here and I'm not staying here. So then it changes the game a little bit, and you have to adjust accordingly. But I've seen that too. Like, I've caught bears before where they're on the ground and one dog is there with them, baying them. And they look at you and they're like, okay. And they just take off, or they go up a tree right there. And that bear could have just as easily swatted the dog aside and been, wearing you like a fur coat. And,
well, and I hope, I think the fair criticism to what I'm saying, it's a little anthropomorphic. I'm assigning human emotions to a bear and saying that it was scared. I don't know if bears get scared per se the way we do, but there was a more than, if I refine that down and boil it down a little bit more, there was an awareness.
Yep.
And that was just really different. It's just something that was
that's interesting.
I hadn't thought about until I
see. I like hearing perspectives like that, because it makes me think deeper about being able to talk about my story and telling my story of why I do what I do. And
well, I think that, that's some of the criticism I've heard of hound hunting, though, is that from an anti-hunter, is that PETA will say that the animal was scared, and they think that they have like mommy daddy relationships for the rest of their life, and they all gather up for Thanksgiving together, and that's not how it works.
So when you
right?
tree and free one, I walk away from that. Now that we're talking about it, I walk away from that with that feeling that I've given this bear grace, or I've shown mercy.
Yeah.
Or go run another day.
I did the same thing with a deer.
Yeah.
I'll point early in the season, and I don't tell my wife about it because she's gonna get mad I'm passing on deer. But if I let one go, you kind of have that, like, I got you, buddy.
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of a relationship there too. And again, I think
something happened to your mic there, Brad.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
I think you unplugged it. I heard a click and then a boom. But
how about now?
We're good.
Am I back?
No, not really, but I've got decent sound quality. We need to be wrapping it up anyway, because this is just like any other hunting story. We could talk about it for 3 hours, man. It'd be so awesome. And I'd love to see you guys come back and experience it again, and bring Braden. I think Braden would, or Jacob would have any of your guys would have a blast doing it.
They would for sure. Can you hear me now?
No. I can hear you, but you're on your computer speakers. We're fine.
Yeah, I did have to switch back to that because as I was talking, I was fiddling with my wire there, and I might have shorted it out. I wasn't paying attention. I was just kind of like. Anyway, sorry. I got a little philosophical on you, but I do think I think like I felt a little bit of that, and the thing I wanted to button up there is that I had that thought, and I thought about it afterwards, and I told Derek that was part of like when we were talking about it that day when we're trying to drag this bear out, taking breaks in between the heave hose. I said, I explained what I just said, and I said that was really different for me, and I'd have to think about if I'd want to shoot another one.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got through the whole experience, I saw how much hard work there was in it, and I've eaten the bear now. I'm like, yeah, like I think that is part of it that's different, but it wouldn't be a deterrent. It's just, it is. I think it is worth recognizing that there's a different relationship with a bear when you take it by dogs than there is with like a deer or anything else you shoot that doesn't know you're there.
Right.
There was an interesting, just a feeling that I had that I didn't anticipate when I walked up on that tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I think that's a deep rooted, emotional response. It goes back to our DNA or genetic makeup. It's like, when you raise a hog, my kids were in 4-H, and we raised hogs for 4-H, and I've got an agricultural background, but that hog knows what's coming. I mean, they don't really know what's coming, but they're aware of you're there, and so I'm drawing some parallels there between the two. That's an interesting concept, you know.
Yeah, I think part of it too is just, you know, you have so much respect for the animal. I think it comes back to where I'm such a deer hunter, like at heart, like taking it. I think turkeys are kind of the same way. You want to take one that thinks he's getting ready to breed, right?
Yeah,
that's just awesome, right? You know, there's something to that. It was just a mindset shift for me.
Yep.
Again, I think I'm through it.
Well, I think deer hunting's a little bit different too, because you know you've done all this work to be stealthful and enter into that world without them detecting you. So you know your scent's right, your stand placement right, the wind's right. You know, all this stuff is right, and you have accomplished it because that buck has no idea you're there. And then all of a sudden you culminate it with that good shot, and he really never knows what hit him. And so that's all part of the journey and the success for the deer hunter. Whereas a bear, when it has, you know, the hounds with it, it knows it's got to find someplace that it can be safe.
You know, I do love what you're saying there, because it's really coming into it. It's just a different expectation. Yep. You know, you're really battling that bear in a different way. Mm-hmm. Like a whitetail doesn't know you're there, but that, if you think of it kind of more in a real battle, Heath even sent me a video yesterday of one running out in the open field, and you can just, I mean, I wish I could have seen that, something like that, of just this bear and what the battle really is. It's a little bit of a war that's waged. So,
I wish you would have been with him. I don't remember what day it was this week, but the one that put him on his truck.
Oh, yeah. He showed me the video of that. Yeah, I might have peed my pants in that scenario.
Well, Brad, man, I appreciate you taking time. I really appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having me, man.
Coming down and experiencing that with us. I would encourage my audience to find guys like you that are objective and open-minded and want to experience this stuff. Don't be afraid to take hunters that have never done this before and let them experience what we do. The only way that hunting, I'm a big proponent of bridging gaps, and in the hunting community, Go Wild's a great place to do that. We get engagement. I'm really surprised with the amount of engagement that I get from non-hound hunters in my posts and different things like that. There's people listening to my podcast over there that are logging hours listening to the podcast. You look at their profile, they're not houndsmen. That's all good. You know, every chance we get to showcase what we do, and when people can walk away from the hunting experience like you and Derek did, man, that is such a huge win for houndsmen and hunting.
I agree, man. Yeah, I agree. And I think, too, you know, there's plenty. I learned so much from that platform. We got guys that post about falconry in Go Wild. You know, it's a really interesting community. And if I've not sold it, you know, we've kind of just been talking, but I'll just pitch it to your group if they haven't joined yet. You know, you get $10 for signing up. You can go to the App Store, download the app, Go Wild, or you can go to downloadgowild.com. And then as you're posting, you know, logging podcasts or logging a bear, you know, these tree bears get a lot of points on Go Wild.
Yeah.
And you know, as you're doing that, you're going to unlock rewards. We have a lot of great earned rewards for members.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you guys that are buying a lot of expensive gear, we have some of that gear. We have, you know, some things that apply directly to houndsmen. But the other thing I'll say is we're adding a lot more. We're trying to get more gear in there. And even if taking the rewards aside, you know, rather than buying stuff on Amazon where, you know, you don't know where your money's going, or actually, you know, it's going to Jeff Bezos stock so he can build flying rockets or whatever, right? But with Go Wild, you know, we're really focused on giving back, and focused, you know, we're donating 1% of our profits into outdoor nonprofits. We are really focused on you know, trying to bridge the communities together, and that's how we get supported. We're not selling your third party data like Meta does and Facebook does. We're not doing creepy stuff to really sell ads. Now you'll see ads on there. I'm not saying we don't have ads, but you know, we know because you logged a deer that you like deer hunting, so we're going to show you deer hunting ads. It's not creepy stuff,
right?
You know? So I hope people get on there and join. If you do join, you'll get a message from me in the first 24 hours. That one's automated. we do that to welcome people. But while that one's Robo Brad, if you reply back, it's really me that responds. So let me know you heard on the show. Last time I came on here and talked to Chris and then Heath, we had a ton of people come out. So if you haven't joined the Houndsman XP guys on Go Wild, now's the time.
I agree. Can't agree more, man. It's a great platform. Thing I tell people, it's like, the amazing thing about your team, Brad, is I can send all the messages I want to Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm never going to hear back from him. And he's not going to listen to what I have to say. But you guys listen to what your audience, what your crowd has to say. You respond. I know you respond to almost every message you get personally.
If I didn't respond, I just missed it because it get lost.
Yeah,
I get a lot of.
But
them.
The hound gear
I
is
respond to everything.
The hound gear is getting ramped up because you guys listen.
Well, and two, like we didn't even until I met you, Chris. I don't think we had treed and freed as an option on bear.
Right.
I hadn't thought about it. I'd never done this before, and you guys were like, "Hey, we tree black bear all the time. It's a lot of work. What's the difference in treeing one and shooting one?" Like at that point, we could have shot it, but we didn't. And so we added that option so you guys can do that. And there's probably other species where we need to add that. So if you guys come in and tell us, our team usually within a week we'll have a trophy fixed.
Yep.
Actually, after one of my to-do lists today is somebody was asking for some species I've never heard of. No idea what this thing is.
No guy.
Something out of Texas because you can kill anything. No,
Catamundi.
No, I don't. It was something I had never heard of, and it's probably out of Texas because you can kill almost anything in Texas.
Right.
I love my Texas buddies. But we're going to add that in today.
Yeah.
So it's a fun platform, man. It's just really different, and I hope people will join that community.
Yep. Well, Brad, I appreciate it. Tell Derek I said hey. I hope Braden realizes what a good time he missed, and he'll want to come.
Jacob's ready to rock and
Jacob
roll.
is too.
Jacob wants to come down because he heard he was on Uncensored with us, and the Uncensored show we were talking about earlier. If you look up Uncensored by Go Wild, that's our podcast. It's usually full of nothing but mistakes and errors and stupid stuff we do while hunting and fishing. So we like to say it's the woods, water, and whatevers from the weekend. We get together on Monday morning at 9 a.m. and just tell the story of what we did. And so Derek sat down with me, and we told the story to, I think it was Dan and Jacob. And so that show's about an hour long. Normally they run 30 minutes, but we let that show run. What's crazy is we barely got into Saturday's hunt. It's just like there was so much with the it's fun to hear Derek too. So if you guys enjoyed this, you might enjoy a little color commentary from Derek.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Brad, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to tell you this.
Yep.
When you got there, I handed you a dog leash, and when you're handling a dog, then that basically becomes your dog during the hunt. So we'll just end it like this. Until next time, you follow your hounds, and I'll follow mine.
Yes, sir.